Have you ever caught yourself wondering why you're still pushing through certain habits at this stage of your life? If you're over 70, you've probably found yourself trapped in patterns that once had meaning but now only bring stress, exhaustion, or guilt. Yet so many of us continue forcing ourselves through physical, social, and emotional routines as if we're still trying to prove our worth to the world. But here's what I've learned. After decades of living and observing, there comes a moment when letting go isn't just wise, it's absolutely essential. That moment is now. After all the years you've walked through, all the battles you've faced, and all the wisdom you've gathered, you deserve something far better than constant stress, unnecessary guilt, or the weight of other people's expectations. Today, we're going to explore 5 specific things that people over 70 simply don't need to do anymore. Not because you're giving up on life, but because you're finally stepping into a season where peace matters more than pressure, and authenticity matters more than keeping up appearances. These are habits and mindsets that tend to linger long past their usefulness, quietly draining your energy and stealing your joy. But once you recognize them for what they are, you can finally release them. Each of these 5 shifts is small but incredibly powerful changes that might just help you reclaim your time, your dignity, and most importantly, your freedom. Stay with me through the end, because you might be surprised by how liberating it feels to stop doing the very things you once believed were necessary. The first thing you can stop doing is forcing yourself to please everyone. Many people over 70 still carry this heavy burden of making others happy, even when it costs them their own peace. And I want to tell you something important. This is one of the most unnecessary and exhausting loads you can carry into your later years. It starts so innocently. You say yes to a dinner invitation when you'd rather stay home. You bite your tongue about something that bothers you because you don't want to create conflict. You agree to watch the grandchildren for the 3rd time this week, even though your body aches and your soul is crying out for quiet. You tell yourself it's the right thing to do, the kind thing to do, but slowly, over time, you begin to feel like your life isn't quite yours anymore. This overwhelming need to please often stems from a lifetime of putting others first, especially if you grew up in an era where self-sacrifice was praised and self-care was dismissed as selfishness. But at this stage of your life, those old rules need serious reconsideration. You've earned the right to be honest about your needs, to speak up for what matters to you, and to stop bending yourself into impossible shapes just to keep everyone comfortable. The people who truly care about you will understand when you set boundaries, and those who don't, well, their reaction tells you everything you need to know about the relationship. There's something an 80-year-old friend once shared with me that I'll never forget. At some point, your no becomes just as sacred as your yes. When you start honoring your own boundaries, you create space for deeper, more authentic connections, the kind that don't depend on you stretching yourself thin. I think of Carol, a 74-year-old woman who spent decades being the glue that held her entire family together. Always hosting, always saying yes, always fixing everyone else's problems. One day she looked at me with exhausted eyes and said, "I woke up and realized I was bone-deep tired. Not just physically tired, but soul tired, and not a single person had asked me how I was doing." That day, she decided to change. She started saying no when she meant no, and something beautiful happened. Instead of everything falling apart, her relationships became clearer and more honest. Some grew stronger, others naturally faded away, but in every case, she felt more alive than she had in years. You don't need to feel guilty about putting yourself first at this stage of life. In fact, doing so often makes you more present, more genuinely available, and more truly loving in the moments you choose to give. You've spent a lifetime giving to others. Now it's time to offer yourself a little grace. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you did something simply because it was what you wanted? Not because someone expected it, not because you felt obligated, but because it brought you joy. If it's been too long, perhaps it's time to start again, not with guilt or apology, but with the quiet confidence that says, "I've lived long enough to know what matters, and I matter too." The second thing you can release is trying to look young. For everyone else, there comes a point when chasing youth becomes more exhausting than fulfilling. And for most people, that point arrives well before Yet we live in a world that constantly whispers or sometimes shouts that you must fight aging with everything you have. The creams, the procedures, the endless products promising to turn back time. The pressure to look younger than you are doesn't magically disappear once you reach your 70s. For some, it only intensifies. But here's a truth that wise older adults understand. Looking young isn't the same as being well, and it certainly doesn't guarantee happiness. Too often, the pursuit of a younger appearance becomes a fear cycle. You notice a new line and rush to erase it. Your hair turns gray and you panic about how others might judge you. But instead of feeling better, you often feel more anxious. Because the real issue isn't the wrinkle or the gray hair. It's the deeply ingrained belief that aging somehow makes you less valuable as a person. That belief isn't just false, it's genuinely harmful. This obsession with youth is rooted in a culture that glorifies appearance and undervalues the profound gift of experience. But as we grow older, we gain something that youth simply cannot provide: perspective. When you constantly try to look young just to meet society's expectations, you rob yourself of the natural dignity that comes with age. Let's be practical here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of yourself, dressing well, staying clean and sharp, looking your best. But that's fundamentally different from trying to erase the very years that shaped you into who you are. A 17-9-year-old man at a senior center once told me, "When I finally stopped dyeing my hair and covering every wrinkle, people started seeing me. Not the version I was pretending to be, but the real me." He said it was the most liberating moment of his life. The truth is, the people who truly love you aren't drawn to your smooth skin or thick hair. They're drawn to your spirit, your humor, the way you listen without judgment, the way you carry both pain and joy with quiet strength. That's what leaves a lasting impression on people's hearts. So instead of wasting precious time and energy fighting the natural process of aging, try embracing it. Let your face tell the story of your life. Let your body reflect a life fully lived. There's a kind of confidence that only comes from owning every year you've walked through. And that confidence can light up any room more powerfully than any anti-aging product ever could. The third thing you can stop doing is pretending to be okay all the time. One of the most exhausting habits that many people carry into their 70s and beyond is the belief that they must always appear strong, cheerful, and perfectly fine, no matter what they're experiencing inside. It's as if we've internalized an unspoken rule: don't complain, don't burden anyone, just smile and say you're doing well. But here's what I've learned: pretending to be okay when you're not doesn't make you strong, it makes you invisible. And worse, it can slowly erode your mental and emotional well-being. After 70, life becomes more complex. There's grief to process, physical discomfort to manage, and sometimes guilt about feeling like a burden. Instead of expressing these very human feelings, many older adults push them deep down, believing that silence equals strength. But in reality, that silence often transforms into isolation. You begin to feel like no one truly understands you, because you've spent years telling everyone that nothing's wrong. The ancient wisdom of Stoicism teaches us that being honest about our inner world isn't weakness, it's actually wisdom. The Stoics believed in acknowledging pain without dramatizing it, and in speaking truth without shame. This means it's not just okay to say, "I'm having a difficult day," or "I could really use some company." It's necessary for your well-being. You weren't placed on this earth to suffer in silence. You're not less dignified simply because you admit when you're struggling. Think about what happens when you tell someone you're fine while carrying the weight of sadness or fear. You're not just hiding your struggle, you're closing the door on meaningful connection. The people around you, family, friends, even neighbors, cannot support you if they don't know you need it. And contrary to what many believe, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of emotional maturity. I remember Helen, an 82-year-old woman who spent decades never admitting when she was struggling. After her husband passed away, she told everyone she was managing just fine. But behind closed doors, she was drowning. When she finally started opening up, sharing her grief in a support group, talking honestly with her daughter, everything shifted. Her relationships deepened, her laughter returned, and she no longer felt like she was living two separate lives. The people who truly care about you would rather know what's really happening than hear another polite lie. They can't be there for a version of you that doesn't exist. They want to be there for you with all your scars, your fears, and your incredible strength. So if you're still trying to hold everything together, still automatically saying "I'm fine" when your heart says otherwise, it might be time to stop. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally wise enough to know that honesty is what leads to healing. You deserve to be seen not just as a cheerful face, but as a full, complex, beautifully human being. The fourth thing you can release is apologizing for living differently. At 70 and beyond, many people find themselves quietly apologizing for the way they choose to live, whether it's declining noisy gatherings, needing more rest, eating dinner earlier, not keeping up with every new technology, or simply preferring peace over constant stimulation. There's often an undertone of apology. They don't say sorry directly, but you can hear it in their voices. "I hope that's okay." "Sorry, I'm not much fun anymore," or "I know I'm being a burden." These small phrases reflect something deeper, lingering pressure to live up to other people's expectations, even in your later years. But here's a fundamental truth. Once you've lived beyond 70, you've earned the right to live life on your own terms, not according to someone else's schedule or social calendar. The need to apologize for prioritizing comfort, boundaries, or your own natural rhythms has to stop. It doesn't make you more polite, it makes you smaller. And you weren't meant to shrink in your later years. You were meant to grow into your truest self. Stoic philosophy teaches us to align our lives with nature and reason, not with society's noise and expectations. This means understanding what brings you peace, what nourishes your soul, and what drains your energy. If you'd rather read a book than attend a crowded family gathering, that doesn't make you antisocial, it means you're wise enough to choose what feeds your spirit. And there's absolutely nothing to apologize for in that choice. This habit of over-apologizing is rooted in how many older adults were raised to believe that your worth depends on how agreeable, accommodating, or self-sacrificing you are. But as you age, you begin to see the true cost of that mindset: exhaustion, resentment, and disconnection from your own needs. You've spent years pleasing others. Now it's time to please your own soul. I remember speaking with Gerald, a 17-year-old man who stopped attending church events, even though he felt pressured to keep showing up. He was tired and simply wanted his Sundays to be quiet and peaceful. But every time he didn't go, he felt compelled to explain himself to everyone. One day, his daughter told him something that changed everything. "Dad, you don't owe anyone an excuse. If it brings you peace, it's the right choice." That conversation transformed him. He stopped apologizing and started owning his new rhythm with pride instead of guilt. Older age brings clarity. You know what truly matters and what doesn't. You know which people give you energy and which ones quietly drain it. You understand what foods agree with you, what music calms your spirit, what pace of life actually feels good in your bones. So why apologize for honoring that hard-earned wisdom? When you say sorry for being too quiet, too slow, or too different, you're sending yourself a message that your preferences are somehow wrong. But they're not wrong. They're the result of a life lived fully, a life that has earned the right to pause, reflect, and choose with intention. Your life is not a performance for others to judge. It's your sanctuary, and there's nothing wrong with protecting it. You don't need to justify your pace, excuse your need for peace, or explain why you no longer do what others expect. You've graduated from that exhausting game. The fifth and final thing you can stop doing is chasing everyone's approval. One of the most persistent habits that many people carry into their 70s and beyond is the constant need for approval. Even after decades of life experience, there's often still that quiet urge to be liked, accepted, or validated by others, family members, neighbors, society at large. We find ourselves second-guessing our decisions, softening our opinions, or pretending to agree with things we don't believe, all because we fear being judged, excluded, or seen as too difficult or too different. This is a trap that many of us have been caught in since childhood, and it often follows us into our golden years. But here's the reality. Life after 70 is far too precious to be lived under someone else's expectations. Stoic wisdom teaches us to focus on what we can actually control: our own actions, thoughts, and values, not the ever-changing opinions of others. Trying to manage how others see us is like trying to hold water in your hands. It slips through, no matter how tightly you grip. Yet so many older adults still carry the exhausting weight of approval-seeking, even when it no longer serves them. They say yes when they want to say no. They stay quiet when their wisdom could offer valuable clarity. They dress or behave in certain ways, not because it feels right, but because it fits what others expect of someone their age. But the older we get, the clearer this truth becomes. Approval is a moving target. You will never please everyone, so why keep trying? I think of Evelyn, a woman I met at a community center in her early 80s. She loved wearing colorful clothes and bold earrings, and she had a laugh that could fill an entire room. But for years, she toned herself down, wore beige, stayed quiet, because her daughter constantly told her to act her age. One day, Evelyn looked in the mirror and asked herself a life-changing question: whose life am I actually living? That week, she started wearing her bright colors again. She told me it made her feel like herself for the first time in years. You don't need permission to be yourself, especially not at this stage of life. The people who truly love you will never require you to shrink, pretend, or apologize for who you are. And those who do, their approval isn't worth the price of your peace. Stoicism reminds us to act according to virtue, not applause. That means doing what's right, not what's popular. Speaking your truth, not what's convenient. Living with integrity, not putting on a performance. Approval is fleeting and unpredictable. Integrity is lasting and reliable. So the next time you feel that familiar urge to please everyone around you, pause and ask yourself, is this true to who I am? If it's not worth your precious time and energy. You've earned your wisdom through decades of living. You've loved, lost, survived, and grown. You don't need to keep chasing acceptance like a child trying to fit in at school. You belong to yourself, to your values, to your own beautifully unfolding life. Let the younger generations hustle for popularity. Let others worry about fitting in and being liked. You've graduated from that exhausting race. And what replaces it is something far more valuable. True freedom. Because the day you stop needing everyone's approval is the day you start living in full color, again bold, unapologetic, and authentically you. That's one of the greatest gifts of growing older. You finally get to be exactly who you are, without explanation or apology. Isn't it remarkable how age reveals what truly matters? When we were young, we were taught to strive constantly to do more, be more, achieve more. But as the years pass, we begin to see with clearer eyes. We start to understand that peace is more valuable than productivity, that genuine connection is more meaningful than status, and that being true to yourself is the greatest freedom of all. Much of what once seemed critically important no longer deserves space in your life. The things we've explored today, pushing your body beyond its limits, chasing other people's approval, living by someone else's pace or rules, these are all weights we've been conditioned to carry. But after 70, those weights become unnecessary burdens. Letting them go doesn't mean giving up on life. It means finally stepping into your own wisdom. You've earned the right to slow down without apology. You've earned the right to say no without lengthy explanations. You've earned the right to rest, to choose what fills you up, and to make peace with both where you are and where you've been. There's a quiet kind of courage in simplifying your life, in trimming away the things that no longer serve your spirit. Perhaps that's what aging well is really about, not clinging desperately to youth, not pretending to be who you were decades ago, but becoming deeply comfortable with who you are right now, living with less noise and pressure, but with more authenticity and freedom. If you've ever felt guilty about slowing down or hesitant to make changes that feel right for you, I hope today's message has given you permission to breathe a little easier. It's not just okay to stop doing certain things after 70, it's necessary. That's how you create space for what actually matters. A life of purpose doesn't have to be busy. A life of meaning doesn't need to be packed with obligations. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is sit quietly in your own truth and know that you're enough, not for what you produce or prove or earn, but simply because you exist. So be kind to yourself, be honest about your needs, and above all, be free. This stage of life isn't the end of your story, it's the most honest and authentic chapter yet. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts and experiences matter deeply, and reading your comments gives me tremendous motivation to keep creating content that serves you. If you found value in this message, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words. Your support helps us continue bringing you content that informs, inspires, and reminds you that your best years can still be ahead of you.